Hi, we're back with American Miscellany. We're up to essay number 70, the Wasp family. So, American Miscellany is a nice old book published in 1865. It's a collection of essays. Our last essay, essay number 69, was Beauty of a Benevolent Life. So, our next subject is the Wasp family. Here on page 160 of American Miscellany, essay number 70. Let's get into it. The Wasp family. Poets and essayists are in the habit of likening the wasp to fops of another genus, and vice versa. The questionable sort of reputation these insects must ascribe to their splendid caparison and to their apparently useless position in the world. This simile is more true in a more curious respect, for there are annual reunions of these glittering creatures, just as in the fashionable world, a fashionable season of a few months, and then all disperse again. The economy of the wasp family possesses considerable interest and deserves far more attention than, in our hostile state of feelings towards the race, we are readily disposed to believe. It is only necessary that the real character of the tribe should be known, to remove at least the blot of laziness from it. That they are a set of bold, insolent, daring robbers, none can deny, yet give them their due, and we shall admit that there is much in their habits of deserving our admiration, and that even their audacious thefts have their redeeming points. The general aspect of the Vespidae, or wasps, is sufficiently familiar to obviate the necessity of description. Their black and gold painted bodies, their powerful mandibles, formidable stings, and their surface destitute of hairs, are present to the eye at the very mention of the word. The society consists of males, females, and neuters, each having their appropriate functions, but the males, on the whole, leading the quietest and least arduous lives. The females are the hard-working foundresses of the colony, and the neuters are wasps of all work, robbing, fighting, defending, nursing, and building, indifferently and by turns. Their history commences most conveniently for our purposes in the spring. At the conclusion of the preceding summer, the males, after pairing, all died, and there remained but a few females behind of all the busy ranks which crowded the vespiary. These were awakened by the return of spring. The solitary wasp finds herself immediately summoned to active duties. She has to contrast the carcass. She has to construct the carcass and to excavate the earthwork for her future people and city. Serious as is the task, she has to effect it all alone, not a single companion to cheer her hours of incessant toil, or to lighten her labor by a single load. Her energies are equal to the undertaking. She is to be seen buzzing about the sunny mornings, looking out for a sight. It is soon found. It is some dry, warm bank, and here she sets to her work. She perforates it and forms a long, circuitous tunnel, at the extremity of which she dips she digs out a vault of considerable dimensions. This task is performed in no careless or slovenly manner, although every particle of rubbish which the little excavator tears from the walls of her cavern must be carried in her jaws, and she does not leave it at the entrance, but voluntarily entails upon herself the vast additional labor of casting it away to some distance. Her design in so doing appears to be principally to avoid the risk of her cell being discovered by a heap of rubbish at the foot of the bank. After the labor of excavation is ended, the walls are to be plastered, and to this fresh duty she at once addresses herself. Surely every person has seen the nest of the wasp, and wondered at its exquisite and delicate architecture of celled paper. Behold the architect. The nest is really made of paper. It was for some time a puzzle to our philosophers. Roemer appears, Roemer? I guess that's some scientist. Roemer appears first to have detected the wasp in the very act of this manufacture. He beheld her alight on a deal window frame, and watching saw her tear a bundle of delicate hair-like fibers about an inch in length from it, bruising the woody fiber with her mandibles until it became like a fine lint. This is the material from which the pepperaceous plaster is to be prepared. Flying away with it to her abode, it is there made into a proper consistence by the addition of her tenacious saliva, and when this part of the process is complete, it forms a fine, smooth, adhesive paste, precisely analogous to the product of our cumbrous and costly mechanism, papier-mâché. Rolling it into a sort of pellet, she conveys it to the summit of the dome, plasters it on the wall, and spreads it out by means of her legs and jaws into a very thin lamina, which is veritable paper. Very thin lamina. Which is veritable paper. Leaf after leaf must be added until the whole cavity is thus papered or plastered over, and not with one coat alone. Generally, the insect lays down 15 or 16, leaving spaces between each layer for the advantage of inward lightness and strength to her sealing. Her labors do not end here. She has built the walls of the city. It remains for her to commence the edifices and supply the population. She builds a terrace of hexagonal cells of marvelous exactness and suspends it by paper pillars from the roof of her texture. These terraces emulate in elegance and artistic skill, and far surpass in utility the famous hanging gardens and terraces of the renowned city of old. A few hundred cells are thus constructed, and at length an interval of comparative repose awaits the laborer, while she proceeds to fulfill her more proper duties as a parent. Single-handed, she has laid the foundation of the Vespopolis. I guess that's the Wasp city of Vespopolis, and has marked out the general design of its future buildings, but she must have further assistance before the city will be complete. The walls, at present bare and desolate, the palace empty and still, are soon to resound with the hum of life and with the busy labors of a new generation. In the cells, the insect deposits her ova, gluing them to the walls by an adhesive substance. They are soon hatched, they become larvae, and are for some time entirely dependent on their parents' exertions for their supply of food. She has to forage for this numerous and voracious progeny, and runs about from cell to cell with utmost solicitude, while the grubs put forth their mouths and are fed by her just as the callow brood of the bird is fed. Most pleasing is it to observe the anxious mother keeping watch over her offspring, and apparently many a needless time popping her head into their snug cots, as if to see how they do, and to give a mouthful of food now and then to some tender young larva not yet big enough to put his head out to be fed. A few weeks slip by. A great change has come over the vespiary. It is replete with life. Hundreds of workers have been born in the interim, and are now so laboring might and main, with the Empress at their head, to extend the buildings and enlarge the city. When complete, a vespiary has been calculated to contain about 15 or 16,000 cells, each of which is thrice a cradle, and therefore in a single season each nest will probably be the birthplace of a full 30,000 wasps. Such is the birth and development of this insect colony, a lesson to states and nations and individuals of the certain results of indomitable perseverance. Let me trace out its government and destinies. The Empress, the protoplast of this interesting microcosm, the foundress of this bustling republic, is an exaggerated type of the duties of its female members. These are produced in comparatively small numbers. They perform the proper duties of wives and mothers. They stay at home, feed the children, and attend to the nurseries. They mostly perish before winter, but a few, more hardy than their fellows, endure its cold and become the perpetuators of the race in the ensuing spring. The males, according to the younger Huber, are far more industrious than the male bees or drones, but are less active by far than the neuters or working wasps. They have the peaceful occupation of scavenging the streets. They sweep the floors of the terraces and avenues and diligently carry off every particle of rubbish. They also undertake the funerals of any deceased companions and speedily cast the dead bodies out of the vespiary. On the whole, they are useful members of the community, and they probably owe their permission to live to their diligence. The workers are the most interesting class. They are smaller in size than either male or female wasps, but are wonderfully energetic and indefatigably laborious. Some are builders and repairers of the breach. They receive a commission to make excursions for building materials, and returning home with their bundles of lint, set themselves to the repairs and extension of the city. Others are the commissariats. The issues of life at home are intimately connected with their expeditions. They roam over fields and meadows, frequently catching flies and weaker insects and carrying the game home, often with no inconsiderable difficulty. Dr. Darwin says he once beheld a curious act of a wasp. It had caught a large fly, and in rising with it into the air, the breeze caught its wings and nearly wrenched it from the wasp's clutches. The insect immediately alighted and deliberately sawed off the wings of its victim, when it was able to carry it in safety away. There was something nobler than instinct in this action, nor is it by any means an isolated example of insect sagacity. Others seek our orchards, select the ripest, sweetest fruits, suck their juices, and convey home the luscious treasure, of which but a small portion is for themselves. These foragers will even enter and rob beehives. Those that tarry at home in every instance share the spoil. Our grocery stores and butchers' stalls are equally attractive to the forager wasps. Surely it is some palliation of the robbery to remember the claims of the hungry kinsfolk, friends, and acquaintance, and little ones at home. There is no squabbling at their orderly meal times, no fighting for the lion's share. Each expectant insect receives its due portion and is content therewith. I have seen, writes the fascinating observer Romore, a worker, after returning home with spoil, on entering the nest, quietly perch at the top and protrude a clear drop of fluid from its mouth. Several wasps drank together from this crystal drop until it was all swallowed. Then the worker would cause a second, and sometimes a third drop to exude, the contents of which were distributed in peace to other wasps. Here is a lesson for our young readers to observe and practice. The mode of government is republican. There is no recognized head, as with the bees, yet an amount of even military discipline and the utmost order are to be found among the subjects. The good of the commonwealth seems to be the prevailing object of each insect. If the workers are building, each has its own spot about an inch square assigned to it, as the amount of work it is expected to execute. It was an interesting discovery of Mr. Knight that wasps also have sentinels. These are placed at the entrance of the vespiary. They run gently in and out of it, and give immediate notice of the approach of danger. To their communications alone does the community give heed, and on their giving the alarm will issue in angry hosts to avenge the injury, and defend their home to the death. Sometimes, however, but rarely, intestine combats take place, and there are terrific duels between the workers, or between a worker and a male. This is a bad affair for the latter, as he has no sting. His fate is generally to die. One of the most striking facts in the natural history of the Vespidae is the occurrence of an annual massacre in October. Then the vespiary is indeed a scene of horrible atrocities and profuse carnage. The wasps, whose affection for their young is generally remarkably strong, seem then to be possessed with a frenzied rage against them. They cease to feed their larvae. They do worse, angrily writes Beaumer. The mothers become implacable murderesses. They drag the helpless larvae out of their cells, slay them, and scatter them outside the nest, strewing the very earth with their dead carcasses. There is no compunction. The massacre is universal. A wise purpose is fulfilled by this apparent cruelty. The coming winter would rapidly destroy, by a far more miserable death, all that are killed on this occasion, and it is a stroke of mercy to terminate their sufferings by a blow. The early frosts destroy the murderers themselves. The scene is now in truth altered. The populous city has become waste, and without inhabitant, saving some 1 or 2 females, which spend the winter in the depths of the vespiary. The complicated galleries, cells, and hanging terraces, and the entire framework of the nest are forever vacated when the female leaves them in the spring, and this exquisite specimen of the insect architecture is abandoned in the destroying influences of time and accident. These interesting features of the history of the Vespidae are full of subject matter for our meditation and admiration, indicating so clearly as they do that the hand that makes them is divine. Yet all these marvelous sagacities, I hope that's right, sagacities? All these marvelous sagacities, contrivances, and governing principles present us with but dim and broken reflections on the far-seeing wisdom that created all things, and for whose pleasure they are and were created. A few more particulars will make the history of this family a little more complete. The preceding sketch has dealt only with the common wasp, Vespa vulgaris. The mason wasp is a solitary insect and builds its nest in sand and brick, being able by means of its strong mandibles to break off pieces of brick with ease, and to burrow to a considerable depth in its substance. It has the peculiarity of storing up 10 or 12 green larvae as food for its own, and resorts to a curious contrivance to prevent them from moving out of its reach. The hornet, Vespa crabo, selects for its habitation commonly some decayed hollow trunk or the eaves of old buildings where, constructing its nest, it forms a tortuous gallery of entrance. Our farmers sometimes make use of these nests to destroy domestic flies, hanging them up in their rooms where they do not molest the family but fall entirely upon the flies. Oh, that's handy. Why don't we do that anymore? Another species, the Vespa britannica, forms a curious oval nest, sometimes to be seen hanging from the branches of trees. Others form elegant nests like half-open flowers with a platform of cells at the bottom. A foreign species constructs a beautiful nest of a substance identical with the very finest cardboard, suspending it like a watch from a guard chain by a ring at the extremity of the bough, out of the reach of monkeys. Sometimes these nests grow to an enormous size. The London Zoological Society has one 6 feet long. A South American species of wasp imitates the bee and is a collector of honey. Bold as are the Vespidae, great as is their fecundity, they are mercifully kept in check. The Ichneumonn, okay, that's a new word, Ichneumon. Ichneumon. The Ichneumon is their ferocious foe. In the West Indian Islands, they are the victims of a parasitic plant which vegetates in their interior. Man leagues his forces against them, and nature itself, in a deluging season or severe winter, destroys thousands and prevents the plague becoming greater than we are able to bear.